Independent Bookstore Day Extravaganza with Craig and Karen supporting local bookstores, audiobooks, and more. Join the world of stories. Libro.fm podcast.
That is a jam, if I've ever heard one.
It's climbing the charts, honestly.
All right, everyone. So welcome to our first official author interview podcast for the extravaganza. Craig, would you like to tell everyone who we will be talking to today?
I would love to. So for day one, we are kicking it off with Hanif Abdurraqib, who is unbelievable. I got weirdly obsessed with Hanif right before the interview. I bought all of the books and I was like, I need to consume all of this because I'm going to interview him, and then was blown away. This was one of my favorite interviews we've ever done in all of our 30 episodes or so. Hanif was so gracious with his time and his knowledge, and I learned so much about grandfather clocks, and what an amazing person.
For sure. This is also great timing because Hanif just released a brand new book. It's called There's Always This Year on Basketball and Ascension, and it has been getting rave reviews. People love this book, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it. I'm hoping to start it this weekend.
Lovely. Well, since there are going to be 4 episodes in the next 4 days, I suppose we should keep the banter to a minimum and give the people what they want.
I think that's right.
I think is not us. I think it's the authors.
Hanif is definitely what the people are here for. So please enjoy the episode. We will meet you again at the end to talk a little bit about who we'll be talking to tomorrow for the extravaganza.
Hello, everyone. Today we are here in person with author Hanif Abdurraqib. Welcome to the podcast, Hanif.
Thank you all so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we've been so excited about this, and know you have a busy schedule, so I'm very happy we could steal you for a little bit.
Of course.
Can you introduce yourself to our listeners and tell us a little more about what you're up to in the book world?
Yeah, I'm Hanif Abdurraqib. I am the author of, I guess, 6 books now. My 6th book, There's Always This Year, comes out in March 26th. And I've written books of poems, I've written books of essays, books of music criticism. And so I'm kind of all over the spectrum in terms of what I've written, but There's Always This Year is kind of a, I suppose it's a meditation on aging and mortality through the lens of basketball. And place, and who gets to make it out of a place and who doesn't, and why that might happen.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's a perfect transition. I wanted to start out talking about your new book, and I know it's a little over a month out, so you're getting very close. How are you feeling about the upcoming launch?
I feel good. It's strange. You get into this strange place, or at least I do, where the book isn't out yet, but you feel like you've lived with it for a very long time, and there's this gap between your current reality and the reality of everyone else receiving the work in the world, which can be really strange, I think, or at least for me, it has been really strange in the past. But this time it feels kind of good. I don't know what the difference is. I think I'm more attuned to just kind of shutting out the noise at this point, and just kind of counting down until book tour starts, which for me is, my book tour is pretty robust and long. And so I'm just kind of in a space where I'm trying to get as much time at home as possible. I'm trying to be in my routines as much as possible and not really think about it. But it's fascinating to see that, it's in this space where people have gotten arcs and have read it and have thoughts on it. And that's always nice. It's always nice to, I don't pay a lot of attention to reviews ever, but I do care what, say, booksellers think. And so that it's been cool to see booksellers kind of talking through it online.
Oh, cool. I'm glad you mentioned the tour as well, because I saw on your Instagram the full list. I was swiping through. I'm like, this is a really extensive tour.
Yeah.
And it seems like some very cool people are joining you along the way. I was
Yeah, I
wondering
got
if you could tell
lucky.
us what this is.
Yeah. Well, I haven't done an in-person book tour since 2019 because
Oh, wow.
Little Devil in America came out in 2021. And we just did everything virtually. It was one of those things in 2021 where I was kind of like, I would rather, if we're going to do most of it virtually, I'd rather just do all of it virtually. And so there was some, I think anticipation for me doing an in-person tour this time around because it's been so long. This one we're breaking it up into 2 different outings. I'm going out in the spring and then going back out in the fall because just with demand, if I did it all at once, I would be on the road from like late March to late June or something,
Oh,
and that
wow.
just
Brutal.
isn't appealing to
Yeah.
me. So,
All your poor houseplants would die. You
yeah,
know?
yeah, it would be hard. It would be really, it's a challenge. And so, but I feel really good. I mean, I'm going, doing kind of some predictable routing, the show and home, Columbus is the first show, and then New York, Philly, DC. But then I get to go down to Miami. I'm doing a thing in Iowa. I'm doing Mission Creek in Iowa. I really love the Raven bookstore out in Lawrence,
we love
Kansas.
them.
And I
Yeah.
really, Danny's a friend of mine, and the Raven hosted me back in 2019, and it was one of the best readings I've ever had in my life. And so Danny was kind enough to bring me back. So there's some places sprinkled in. I'm going to be in Detroit with Source, who I also love Source booksellers. It's in terms of people joining me, you get lucky with these things. I think it's very anxiety inducing for me as someone who was not like a cool kid in school and who did, because it's essentially just like asking a person out on a date. And so weirdly in New York, we are still looking, maybe by the time people hear this, we will have found someone. We're still looking for a conversation partner, in part because, I was maybe too shy about asking people. But, in DC, there's Jason Reynolds, he's a pal of mine, and I'm excited about that. In Philly, it's D. Matthews, which is thrilling. In Miami, it's my friend Scott Cunningham. Los Angeles, it's Tracy Thomas, who does the Stacks podcast, of course. San Francisco, I was really lucky to get Shireen Marisol Meraji. It's just like a group of people that doesn't seem normal for me. At Mission Creek, I am technically opening up for Nico Case, so
Wow.
it's like I got really lucky on this run. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm a little and tickets are kind of like selling out really fast, and so I'm just eager to see people. That part of it's really exciting to me, to bring a book to life in front of people.
Yeah, it's amazing.
This seems strange to like quote you, but as I was reading about your upcoming tour, this quote that I love, there's something about setting eyes on the people who hold you up instead of imagining them. And I'm like, this makes sense why it's such a exciting thing to be back on the road as an author.
Yeah, we'll see how I feel after the first week. But I'm excited. I am excited nonetheless. Yeah.
Awesome.
It's amazing. I hope you come to the East Coast. But I want to transition into talking about some of your essays that I read leading up to this. And as anyone that's familiar with your work, you obviously write a ton about music, and in multiple essays you've compared music to religion. I think you called it like the Church of Bruce Springsteen, or when you went to go see the listening tour for Coloring Book, it was like being in church. And I would just love to hear like what that comparison means to you.
Well, I think music, and I think about these kind of communal activities where everyone is at least ostensibly experiencing the same thing from a sensory standpoint, hearing the same things and watching the same things, but not experiencing the same set of emotions that comes with that sensory experience, which is kind of like a relationship with faith. I think people, I was raised Muslim, and you pray 5 times a day, and you pray alongside people who are perhaps coming to the prayer with the same mindset, but not taking the exact same thing out of it that you are. And so music has this kind of, I love a concert. I love a communal shared experience wherein the witnessing might be similar, but the emotional takeaways are certainly not. And I think that is very faith-like. That is very religious, in that, many of us, myself included, pick and choose what we take from our faith experience, right? No matter what the texts, or no matter what the actions say or will us to do, we all take what we can from it. And so I think music has this kind of approach, but I also just genuinely think that music can allow for people to go to an elsewhere that is beyond explanation, which is also a very church-like experience for me, or religious-based experience for me. So much of it is, and I'm not even that religious of a person at this point in my life, but I do think that so much of it is, at least in my hunger for new music or the excitement of new music, I'm seeking a doorway to an elsewhere that I don't know exists yet. And therefore I don't know what it looks like, but I know when I found it. And when I found it, I really can't explain it. And I probably can't show it to you. that is faith in a way. Not only the pursuit of that is faith, but even the arrival at it requires a type of faith to unlock that door.
Thank you so much for that. I love how beautifully you write about the moment of a live show and this shared experience that you're mentioning. And a couple of phrases that you've used are that you're an audience watcher, which I am as
Yeah,
well. I
for
love
sure.
watching the
Yeah.
other people around me. And in an article that we read where you were being interviewed, you called it shared witnessing,
Mhm.
and that just really resonated so much in terms of experiences it shows. But I feel that shared witnessing also is so applicable to all of your writing as a whole. So I was curious if you agree with that and if you can talk a little bit more about that idea and why it's important to you.
Yeah, well, one, I just think it's a shared witness allows us to perhaps revel in a thing, that's one, but also just by way of confirmation that we're witnessing a miracle together too. I'm the youngest of four, and I spent a lot of time alone as a kid. Not because my family was in any way neglectful. It's just everyone had their stuff to do. My parents had jobs, and my older siblings were way cooler than I was, and all of these things. And so I spent a lot of my formative years alone. Even in my early 20s, I spent a lot of time alone, which meant that I would oftentimes hear things or be moved by things or see things, and I was the only one who could confirm what I'd witnessed, right? Now, this is fine, of course, this happens, and um, that's just a part of the machine of consuming, right? But there is something, even if it's what I just mentioned of we're all witnessing the same thing but reacting to it differently. Just that act of saying, "Do you remember this time when we were here?" and having someone respond affirmatively, that is kind of filling in some potential emotional gaps that might exist in whatever future memory holes that we place things in. And the other thing about it is, if you are someone like me who's experienced a lot of loss, like I've lost a lot of people, um, it's not just about, say, an audience at a concert, but to witness a life alongside of others. And, even if that life comes to us in a different way, for example, losing my dear friend Tyler, I lost a dear friend, his mother lost a son, right? And so our experience of that life is not the same, but we both witnessed at least a good portion of that life. And we can kind of commiserate through our grief about that witnessing. And that witnessing operates as act of not only confirmation that the life existed, but that the life was sometimes good. The life was more than just grief. And so I think I engage in this act of encouraging a shared witness so that there are multiple stories when absences arise and when absences accumulate, or when the buildings get painted over or torn down. There has to be more than just the one story, because the one story might not be the full story.
That's beautiful. You just mentioned, tearing a building down, and it used to be there, and now it's not, and like remembering these things. And speaking of memory, when I was reading about the shared witnessing and being at a concert, and it made me think of like recent concerts I've been to. And when I'm there, and I'm sure this is, familiar for both of you too, everyone has their phone out, and
Yeah.
everyone's almost watching the show through their phone and
Right.
sharing it and recording every song and taking hundreds of pictures. And sometimes I find myself being like annoyed by it, but other times I'm like, I get it. Like I love going back on my phone and like reliving these moments.
Yeah.
And speaking of like being in the moment and that witnessing of like a beautiful thing that's happening right now, like I'm just curious what you think about that when you're at a show and there's just everyone's got the phone out and is capturing and sharing.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, especially for young folks. I try to never, I'm someone who, I go to way fewer shows now than I used to, but also there was a point in my life, I've seen more live music than most people at this point, right?
Mhm.
There was a point in my life where I would be going to 4 to 5 shows a week every single week for years, right? And
Yeah.
so there's a reality wherein, and this was like before, this is like in the flip phone era
Yeah.
or the brick Nokia phones or whatever.
Yeah.
And so there was no real option of that kind of archival, but I would have undoubtedly, right? And now I'm less inclined to do that, perhaps. Some of that is because I am less, it takes a lot more to bring me to a point of awe and amazement at a live music show, because I've seen so much live music that it takes a lot to bring me to a place where I'd want to archive something, which doesn't mean that what I'm witnessing is bad. It's just, this is good. I'm having a great time. and I'm just enjoying this. It for me, if I want to archive, a great example of this is one of the best shows I saw last year was Joy Aladakun. I went to go see Joy Aladakun play, and they were incredible. And then there was this moment in the set where they did this cover of Elton John's Rocket Man, which is, I love Elton John, but Rocket Man's not a song I like. It's the rare Elton John song I just, I don't know if one would consider that his most famous song, but, there are some artists where it's like their most famous song is, to me, maybe their worst, and that's not always the case, but Elton John is one. I feel like maybe David Bowie's another one if people think Let's Dance is his most famous song. Anyway, but about 30 seconds into the song, I realized, oh, this is a different kind of rendition of this song that's moving me in a unique way. And I want to have this. I want to, in part because I knew I wouldn't be able to see it anyway. It was like Joy was playing this song at this concert. It's not one of their songs. It's just like a song that they're playing. And so I was like, I need to capture this because, so there are moments. And so because I'm seeking those moments and seeking the kind of excitement of those moments, I'm not very, I try not to be really precious about folks, particularly young folks, I think, filming at concerts, because there's a shared language between that kind of, if we were to expand the notion of witness is not just, I am here at this place with these other people. It is sometimes, I'm here at this place and you are not here and I wish you were here.
Yeah.
And I would like to share something with you. And so I'm not too precious about that. I mean, I fully understand it. At this point, I'm the guy at shows. I just kind of I carve out a space for myself in the back of the room and just lean against the wall and watch. And so, I stay out of the way mostly. And some of that is because I've had my fun in like droves and droves by pounds and pounds. I've had the kind of fun that I think I had when I was younger at concerts. And now I kind of am content just being like, just give me a decent eye line of the stage. And I'm content. And so, yeah, I appreciate in some ways the kind of relentless archival that takes place, because it also is, I fully believe that it is also serving people, not just them sharing things with their friends and the people they wish were there. It's also maybe serving the future version of this person's self who maybe was heartbroken who came to this concert heartbroken and heard something live that made them for a moment feel less so, and they can watch that forever.
I recently had the absolute pleasure of seeing an event at Third Man Records in Detroit, where you were in conversation with Jack White.
Oh, yeah, with Jack. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
have probably talked about it 1,000 times to Craig. Many things resonated with me, but something that just stuck out the most, I would say, was how important place and community and where you come from is to both of you and your work. It emanates out of everything that you do. And I'm wondering, if that has changed throughout your career, how you think about place and its importance. And I guess I'm specifically thinking about, the troubled times of the pandemic when we were in isolation and place meant something different. It meant virtual and remote and book tours couldn't happen. How has place changed for you in your work?
Yeah, it's forever evolving. And Jack, I think, was a bit more critical of Detroit and his relationship with Detroit through a lot of affection. But very much was speaking about Detroit as, and I think he was candid about this, as someone who was very much an insider who wanted to get out and then became an outsider who did not necessarily maybe want to get back in, but loved it differently from afar. I don't have, my experience is not necessarily that. A big part of it is always this year is the conversation around how I never wanted to leave Columbus. I never had these fantasies of going elsewhere and quote unquote making it. I didn't even know what making it meant, but the reality is, and I talk about this a bit, you don't, it could be argued, and I think this for me feels accurate, that place is the second decision that's made for you. You don't make that decision. Maybe your parents, who your parents are, is maybe the first decision that's made for you. Place is the second one. You don't choose place. It just happens to you. Now, if someone lives long enough and has the means, then you can decide whether or not you choose place back, right? Columbus is a place that chose me, and then at some point in our shared lives, I decided to choose it back. And that choosing, for me, comes with great concern and great consequence, because that choosing says that I am at least in part a reflection of this place, and I would like it to be a reflection of whatever values I hold. And Columbus is not that all the time. And so then the question becomes, whatever influence I have, how can I utilize it to perhaps nudge this city toward a place where everyone can at least have the opportunity to choose it with the level of enthusiasm that I once did? And I don't really think that math changes. That math changes every few months, because Columbus is a city that, for me, seems like it struggles to find an identity. It wants to be a tech city or a food city or whatever else. And when a city does not know what it wants to be, it tries to be everything. And it tries to be everything at the expense of people who have been there for a very long time and who were just satisfied with the city it was. And so I love Columbus. I don't have any designs on leaving Columbus. But through choosing a place, there comes a level of accountability and responsibility, I think, to say this is no longer something that just happened to me and I'm drifting in the breeze of this city I love. I could get away with that maybe for the first 16, 17 years of my life, and even in my early 20s, I suppose I did. But now I feel like I think I'm aiming to find ways to better take responsibility for that choosing, because if I can't do that, then I might as well just go be anywhere, go be somewhere where I can maybe just move into a place and float along with whatever the infrastructure of the city is, or whatever the whatever the structural barriers of the city may be. But that doesn't always work for me in a place like Columbus, because I love it so much.
Yeah. I'm just now realizing too, we started talking about indie presses before we were recording, and I realized that $2 Radio, who published your book, is right down the street from you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking about your book, we were going to ask you an audiobook question. Big surprise, being Libro. So you narrated some of your own books, and when I was listening to them, your narration was really unique to me. I listened to a lot of audiobooks, and it felt very different to me. And it got me thinking of like poetry slams that I've been to. And I was actually curious if like your experience as a poet in that world has dictated it in any way, the way that you narrate.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of just read as I try. So I did the audiobook for the 5th year anniversary of They Can't Kill Us Until They Kill Us, and I did the audiobook for Fortune for Your Disaster, which is a book of poems. And I just did the audiobook for There's Always This Year, but I wasn't going to. I think audiobooks have been hard for me because of the way I read. Sometimes I get a bit stifled by the audiobook process, which is understandable. Like audiobooks have to be legible in a way, and so they can be performed to a degree, but they also have to be kind of legible to the ear. But I came up performing my work in Poetry Slam, and that required having a real growing a real understanding of the instrumentation of the voice, or the instrumentation of language, I think, perhaps, instead of the instrumentation of the voice. And understanding the kind of ebbs and flows of a long sentence. I write very long sentences, right? And so and understanding the pace at which I read comfortably. All these things come to life in my reading experience, and that is just kind of how I try to, really imbue all my reading with that kind of energy. And I kind of don't really think about where it's happening. I'm always trying to perform the same way and maintain the same performance style, whether I'm reading an audiobook or whether I'm performing at like the Cantab in Boston. It's the same.
That's when I was saying I went to poetry slams. That's where I go.
Yeah, I love that place. I love that place, and I featured there last spring, for the first time since they'd come back, which was really cool.
I know, I was scared they weren't going to.
Yeah,
I just went back for the first time like a few months ago, and I was like so happy to be back there.
It's great. It's one of my favorite spaces, one of my favorite poetry spaces in the whole world. And so I think it would actually be a betrayal to my roots. I came up reading in dive bars and in basements and in, at punk shows. It would be a betrayal to those roots, I think, if I tried to alter that reading style based off of what I was reading or where I was reading. It all has to feel the same. And I think it would be disappointing to someone if they got an audiobook that I performed and they didn't hear me reading it as I would actually read the book.
I could ask you a million more questions, but I know we only have 30 minutes with you, so we're going to move into our lightning round section.
Okay. I mean, if you have other questions, it's fine. I don't have anything to do to like I don't know. If you got other questions, it's fine.
Thank you so much for being so generous with your time. So lightning round, I think we have 4
Sure.
kind of rapid fire questions. Some of them are sillier than others. And Craig, I believe, has the first one.
Craig has the silly one. On your website, it says, I write poems. I write things about music. I am probably eating French fries.
Sure.
So question, what is your favorite style of French fry?
Like I like a steak fry or a crinkle cut fry. Anything with some thickness and density to it, I think. I don't really like shoestring fries at all. Though I feel like those are becoming more dominant in the culture.
In the French fry space.
Yeah, it's strange. Those don't really do it for me. So yeah, the thicker the fry, the better.
All right.
Possibly a redundant question, given that, but what is your go-to writing snack?
Now I don't really have one. I don't eat as much candy as I used to at all, but I used to kind of have like sour twin cherries on my desk, and I would eat those while I wrote, and then I was just eating too much of them. But now there's really no, I'm a runner, and I run in the mornings, and so what that means is I have to spend the majority of my days just like rehydrating myself. And so now my go-to running snack is just like a large water bottle filled with water that's mixed with like hydration powder. It's very not exciting, but that is how I spend my days now, just slowly rehydrating myself.
Nice. This is a self-serving question. Favorite Midwest emo band, either old or current?
Gosh. The Get Up Kids come to mind. Fireworks. You know what? It's Fireworks out of Detroit. I'm going to say Fireworks for sure.
Fireworks, so good.
Out of Detroit. Yeah, I mean that's probably I don't know if that's my all-time favorite, but today, I've always loved them, and I think Fireworks are kind of like your favorite band. If you ask bands in that window, in that like mid-late 2000s, early 2010s window of pop punk, emo, punk, whatever, you get a lot of bands who are like, oh, I love I love Fireworks. And and that record they put out last year is just monumentally great.
Yes.
Awesome. What is your dream collaboration? And this could be writer, artist, musician, you name it.
Also Fireworks.
Yeah, also Fireworks. No, I'm going to take out all musicians. I've worked with, I think, most of the musicians I would want to work with in some capacity. Well, most of the ones who would respond to my calls, at least. I think there are poets I love who are experimental, like Lily and Yvonne Bertram, their work is so experimental and brilliant. And I think that I would just love to at least be witness to what they're doing and maybe contribute in whatever small way I could. Visual art I just love like collage. No, I love collage, but like quilt making and textiles. I don't know if I'd have a home in that space, but I feel like that's maybe the next, that's like the next big leap for me in terms of collaborative art is like, how can, I find like a textile artist doing interesting work that my text can fold into. Yeah. I don't know. That's not a great answer, but
I think it's a fantastic answer. As a textile artist, but not a good one, I applaud you. I am not your your desired textile artist, but I think that would be amazing.
Yeah.
Our last silly question for you. So we call this Instagram story time, in which we go through your Instagram and find a picture about which we have follow-up questions.
Sure.
So Craig will show you what we chose for today.
Oh, the grandfather clock. Yeah.
Can you describe this photo for our listeners and tell them what's going on here?
Yeah, it's a photo of me with a Swedish Mora clock, which is like a old Swedish grandfather clock. This one is from 1912, I think, or maybe a little bit earlier than that. It's like a teal clock with the Mora clocks had often flowers painted on them, hand painted. And it's me standing next to it, in like all black, because I'm often wearing all black, with actually a funny shirt, a vintage Sham 69 shirt. Sham 69, the great punk band out of Hersham. And their lead singer, who was on the front of that shirt, Jimmy Percy, just had a birthday the other day. And so that grandfather clock was... I kind of got it from a pal who's like a clock builder, and he kind of somehow he got that clock for parts, He was trying to build another grandfather clock and got the Swedish Mora clock for parts. And he used like 2 of the parts, but then, those Swedish clocks are not really compatible with the grandfather clocks of like America's 1940s or whatever. And so he was just going to throw it away because it didn't work. It was kind of like, well, I'm going to just get rid of this. And I thought, well, it's so beautiful. And I thought, well, just let me have it and I'll try to work on it. Every winter I set out to do a kind of, I learn a skill and try to execute it. In winter of 2020, I think I learned how to reupholster a chair, and I upholstered this chair in my house that I had. I learned how to build. I have a large sneaker collection, and so one winter I learned how to build floating shelves and build out a sneaker room. So I try to take on these tasks just mostly to stave off the despair of winter. And last year I was like, I'm going to repair this clock. Now I didn't get done with it. It's like an impressively hard amount of work to get that clock up and running. But I did kind of get it starting to go. And this year I tweaked it a little more. And I think I'm just going to call in somebody to finish the job because I would love to have that clock functional working in my house because it's so beautiful. But my house is kind of like a museum of these things. I mean, I have an old 1930s Wurlitzer, or I guess it's 40s Wurlitzer jukebox that I just kind of have sitting in my house that I also need to fix and get going. And I have like a old vintage Prohibition era safe that looks cool, but mostly just stores my bobblehead collection. So, my house is kind of like a museum of my interests and excitements, which is cool. I think I'm very lucky to live in the Midwest and have, where it's like I have space for these kind of things. But that clock is I would like to have it up and running before the end of the year.
Awesome.
I love the idea of like a burglar coming in and being like opening the safe and then it's just full of
cool.
bobbleheads.
It's just old toys.
Yeah.
I mean, the safe does look very impressive. Like whatever's in it is probably worth a lot of money, but it's not. It's like truly. I think my bobblehead collection combined might fetch you like $1,500 if you're lucky. So
yeah, they got to go into the sneaker room for the real money.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think our last question for you, this is where we beg you for book recommendations. We're curious if there's anything you're reading now or recently read that you enjoy and recommend.
Yeah. The Apology, which is a novel by Jimin Han. Diane Seuss has a new book of poems called Modern Poetry. I believe it's called Modern Poetry, which I think comes out maybe a week after my book. I'm trying not to get as many arcs as I used to because I get sent a lot, but I would like to, read fewer arcs.
You need room in that house for more clocks.
Yeah, I need more vintage clocks. Yeah. But that book is good. I'm reading a lot of poems. Hold on one second. There's like I'm reading like a ton of books of poems because I just finished, a book of essays and I find myself creeping back into poems. And so Leslie Sines has a book that came out this year that's called, or last fall, it's called Have You Been Long Enough at the Table, which I really, really adore. The book Grand Tour by Elisa Gonzalez is another book of poems I really love. I'm trying to get really more into fiction. I say that every year. I mean, I grew up reading only fiction, and now it's not that the fiction is bad. It's, I think there's a lot of great fiction. But I find myself only reading the books of fiction that my friends write. Yeah. And I would like to expand beyond that. But The Apology is a great fiction book. I know I just said I'm only reading fictions my friends write, and I'm going to name a book that my friend wrote. But The Men Can't Be Saved by Ben Perkert is a book I really loved and really loved just kind of, indulging in. I know I'm naming a lot. Sorry.
No, it's great.
This is wonderful.
This is the best part of the podcast. We get the best to be read list.
And I've been kind of like spending a lot of time with old books, old June Jordan. I have this like June Jordan book called Who Look at Me, which is like a rare June Jordan book of the poem Who Look at Me aligned with images that were inspired. This book came out in maybe 1970s. Images inspired by the poems are all like scattered throughout, and that is really cool. I'm rereading Gabby Calva-Caressi's Rocket Fantastic, which is another book of poems I love. But really like trying to tap into fiction is the move. I'm reading Percival Everett's new book right now, James, and really enjoying it. You know, I'm savoring it. I'm like reading it really slowly. Really, really enjoying that. And I'm reading the new Tommy Orange book too. You know, I'm trying to not read 2 novels at once, but I really love Tommy Orange. So I'm reading that one too. And I have that one with me, and I'm probably going to finish it tonight. I'm going to try to get out of, there's like dinners we do. I'm trying to get out of dinner like a little early so I can finish Tommy Orange and watch the Timberwolves game. So let's see if I can get those 2 things done.
That sounds awesome. I think I need to finish the new Tommy Orange book is the perfect excuse to get out of a dinner at a book selling conference. So everyone will understand.
Yeah. I never met Tom. I mean, you know, the funny thing, there's so many writers I admire who I just, you know, have never met at all. You know, I keep to myself. I'm like in my house a lot in Ohio. So, and I don't go to like the writer parties that happen. You know, I don't go to like awards stuff ever. Even if I'm up for it, where I just kind of like watch from afar. And so there's so many writers I admire deeply who I've never met. And I'm trying to get in the practice of sending letters and sending notes to writers, you know, expressing gratitude. So maybe I'll drop Tommy a note because I'm really so moved and impressed by his writing. And we've never even been in the same room, I don't think.
Don't worry, I'm sure he listens to this podcast, you know, so he'll
yeah. Tommy, if you're listening, I'm a big fan.
Well, that is all the questions we have for you. Thank you so much for making time for us today. I know you're super busy, and this has been a really lovely conversation for us.
This was really great. Thank you all so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us for our first episode of the podcast extravaganza. We hope you enjoyed learning more about Hanif and his writing and what he's up to next. Craig, do you want to talk about what people can expect tomorrow?
Yes, on our next podcast that comes out in like 12 hours, which is ridiculous.
Moments.
What'd you say?
Mere moments from now.
Yes, mere moments from now, depending on when you're listening to this. We got to sit down with Andrew Sean Greer, who wrote Less and Less is Lost, among other things. And if you've ever listened to this podcast before, you'll know that this was a big day for me. I am a big fan of Less.
Yes, we are both huge fans of his work. It was so nice to meet him in person. He's very tall. He's very funny. He complimented Craig's shoes. It was a fantastic meeting.
Yes, it was amazing. I haven't taken the shoes off since. So just been sleeping in platform Doc Martens.
That sounds very uncomfortable. Well, anyway, we will see you tomorrow for our interview with Andrew. And just a reminder, there's still going to be 2 more episodes after that. We'll talk to Dr. Darcy Little Badger, and we will also talk to Stephen Rowley, the author of The Guncle.
Yes, amazing. And as always, thank you for listening.
Independent Bookstore Day extravaganza with Craig and Karen supporting local bookstores, audiobooks, and more. Join the world of stories.